So I started with the food guide. And if you haven't seen the food guide, it is one of the few things where I'm big on just don't use so many words. Use pictures, use animation. Be sure to have the capture of your audience that you can teach them without overwhelming them. And so this food guide is the basics. It is like meant to be short, bullet points, not even complete sentences. This is pictures and lists of food of okay, you say count carbs. I don't know how to count carbs. I've never done that before. So that gets them off in a sidetrack and then they stop doing it. So I said, I hand them this book and say, all right, start with the good choices, move to better when you get good mastered, and then we'll get to best somewhere in the next year. We went to this page at first and said, all right, start at good, because sometimes those are the foods that they don't have as much fat, or they have some other things that aren't quite as ideal, but they're easy on the palate. So I said, start at good, tell me what you would eat, and then work your way up to better or best. And this kid starts reading this. We turn to this page and he's like, pepperoni? That's on the list? I'm like, yep, pepperoni. He goes, tomorrow they're gonna serve pizza at school. And I said, here's the way you eat pizza on the ketogenic diet. You take the toppings off, which is cheese and pepperoni. Instead of having 3 slices of pizza, maybe it's gonna take 5 in order for you to feel full. Just don't eat the crust. Just scrape the top off and eat those top toppings. But what happened next was what made me laugh so hard. And that is that his mom was looking at the list too. She said, how is Spam on the list? And I said, look at the ingredients. She says, isn't that like super processed? They took pork, and they especially took the parts of pork that aren't quite organ meat, but they aren't the prettiest parts of the pig, and they put them in a loaf, and they put some salt on it. Now, this version has some carbs in it. It's got some little potato starch and a hint of sugar. But I'll tell you, when you look at how many carbs that has on it, you say, yeah, total carbs is 1. So in the world of options, Spam is not bad. All right, so if we look at, go back to our food guide and say, what else is on there? Of course, I can't get through a lecture without mentioning Braunschweiger. And I'm from South Dakota. I often tease people that if you want to know what your culture of food looks like, go to your local gas station and see what's sold. If you go to the food stores in South Dakota that are kind of like the Country Mart, where it's got a lot of things and it's the gas station, you'll find Braunschweiger or liverwurst in a yellow roll in the gas station. The ingredients, which is like 4 words. It is pork liver, it is pork sauce, pork salt, and then some spices, onions and spices. I mean, I think that's amazing. I can't help but say, well, why would I bring that up? All right, so here is some of the vitamins where if you did look inside the book any way you can, there's this chart that says, here are these foods that have different kinds of nutrients in them. And I always talk about eating liver and sardines. Now, when you look at this chart, the red circles are around the vitamin with the highest number on this chart. So if you just look along the liver row there, and by liver I actually do mean liverwurst. You can see where liverwurst is. It's the 2nd row from the bottom. In that row, though, it wins like over and over and over again for the different kinds of nutrients. Now look right above that in sardines, and you can see sardines has 8.9 in the red text. That means it was number 2. And if I thought that was relevant, I tried to put it in red text for you. Vitamin E, and then choline, uniquely enough, is sardines. We're going to get to eggs in a minute. Notice eggs wins for choline, and folate, and number 2 for folate, and number 2 for B5. So you hop over to the minerals, which again, especially looking at sardines, it gets number 2 for calcium, number 2 for iron. Liver is the one who wins for iron. And then the other minerals, I mean, several of them, the sardines win out on. And you can't get out of the first few videos when I'm talking about what types of foods do I really ask people to take away their biases, because I don't think the marketing team for liverwurst or sardines did a very good job of what nutrients you get out of this, and be willing to try it. But for those of you that have been watching me on Facebook, the other thing I want to point out is this is another way to get beef liver. And again, I don't have any endorsements. I just was looking for ways that you could get liver. And I'm going to hold this up there and say, look at the number of ingredients that are found in that. So again, your saturated fats, 0 trans fats, your carbohydrates you have a little bit of, but nothing exciting. And then you look through those vitamins and you're like, yeah, and what did they put in it? They put grass-fed beef and some sea salt, and they dehydrated it. So let's go back to our food guide really quick. It's easy to look at some of the pictures that are in this food guide and say, yeah, ribs, perfect, some marbled steak. And those are, of course, what people first think about with a ketogenic diet, so I don't think they need much advertisement. But when you get to some poultry and eggs, I really point out that, again, good. You'll get people who use chicken breasts and slices of chicken. Well, this kid said pheasant. Now, we're from South Dakota, which is like the mecca for hunting pheasants. And if you're like me, you're like, like, I'll eat liver, but pheasant? And every person in South Dakota says, you just haven't tasted my pheasant. And I'm like, and I don't want to. But pheasant and duck are actually very fatty birds. But some more popular ones. The kid, when he said, there's pheasant on here, and he likes it, so his mother must have a trick or something. But Buffalo Wild Wings are the other place where I tell patients, just, if you like that, eat that. Eat that until you're sick of it. Dip it in some really heavy fat dressing, not the low-fat ranch dressing. I want the blue cheese made out of real blue cheese. Those types of tastes will keep them on the ketogenic diet. But don't have it with soda pop or beer. You're going to see alcohol here in a second. But what I really want you to see is what's under the fish and shellfish. So you go to Good, and honestly, cod, I suppose. We're from the Midwest, so you're probably not going to find even oysters did not pull his attention in. But he'd actually heard of sardines, not with a lovely face or anything. But I think it's worth just showing you. Okay, so here is mackerel. Mackerel, again, easy, cheap, safe. This is in olive oil. It's great if you can find it in actual fish oil, but we can't. So olive oil is what we buy here. I like to point out the ingredients in this one. Just check that out. It is, fish and some oil and some salt. If you haven't eaten mackerel or you haven't eaten sardines, this is our chronometer app, and I've done this a couple of times just showing you how I would look up food. So if you go to foods and then you type in mackerel, I already did this ahead of the show, and in this case, the serving size for this is 85 grams was what was on the can. And then you look at that. Guess what? There are no carbs, there's no fiber, there's no sugar. And you get to the fats, and there's like a lot of good fats. You've got your monounsaturated fats, which is probably what the olive oil is from. And then you've got your fish, your omega-3, a little bit of omega-6, and that's the kind of omega-6 that's probably really stable, meaning it's not easy to turn into an oxidative stress. And then trans fats are 0. But almost more importantly, check out the minerals that are found in that can of sardines and the zinc. I think there's some vitamins up here, yeah. The vitamins, again, people say, how do you get all your vitamins on a ketogenic diet? And I hand them that little book and say, what will you eat? And that's where we start. For the vegetables, people say, well, what can I have for vegetables? So I have them turn to this page, and I make sure that they read the statement that I put on the bottom, which is vegetables on a ketogenic diet are really meant to carry fat to your gut. I mean, again, we're trying to get a chemistry set going. We want ketones in circulation. That means that the food that goes in needs to ignite or trigger a chemistry set that can only be present when you have 80% fat. So if you put in these lovely little salads with a sprinkle of olive oil, that's not going to cut it. We want foods that are going to carry the fat to your gut. Now, rhubarb is and blackberries were about as fruity as I got. Yeah, tomatoes are a fruit, I know. But then kind of looking at some of the better options, I love that Brussels sprouts, if you've not ever liked them before, and bacon grease, you can't find a better recipe than just taking your leftover bacon fat, slathering your Brussels sprouts and that are cut in half, because you want to cut them in half so that the fat can get in between the little leaves of the Brussels sprout and make it even fattier. So, and then you put them under the broiler until they turn brown, and even a little like dark brown, and they have this kind of nutty, fat bacon, really good. But then on the top, what I tried to point out without really offending or kind of pushing people away too far was the fermentation of vegetables really helps on the ketogenic diet. So I just put cabbage in here, but fermented vegetables, that process where a bacteria really helps you digest that vegetable before you digest it, which sounds a little gross, but that's what fermentation is. Those really do help. I think of the other major dishes that I use on the ketogenic diet is creamed spinach, like with sour cream and high-fat cream cheese and some butter and garlic, and it's like the best. I love it. But creamed spinach, and once you make it, you can use it in leftovers for a few days, and that's how my life works. I then get down to dairy. So the highest carbs are in skim milk, and using high-fat milks to make cheeses. I like the rule that the harder the cheese, the better it is for the ketogenic diet. High fats make a harder cheese. So some of the little traps I've seen folks fall into is when they buy pre-shredded cheese. There's some powder that goes on those shredded cheese so it doesn't clump, which is great for the freezer and for marketing. But some of those powders are a form of a carbohydrate powder. And that's a lot of it in there once you take a bag of shredded cheese and say, I don't know what's wrong, Doc. I don't know where I'm getting carbs. And it's a little bitty thing, so it's not a big deal. But we then go through the fats again. And what is on the fat, good, better, best is, I actually don't like that sesame seed and grapeseed oil even made the list. But I'm trying to start with places where you migrate away from just pure vegetable oils or seed oils at all. I don't want them on the list. I learned if I take them completely off at the beginning, I get a lot of pushback. So I said, well, let's just start with a couple of seed oils, which still aren't great, but the closer we can get to fats that are solid at room temperature, the better we can be. So as I look at fats like lard or tallow or butter, all of those are a better place for fats. And again, we looked for space on this page and just said, you know what, we've mentioned the high fats from beef and the high fats from the hogs in the other pages. So we said, well, let's make sure we do educate that these fats that are solid at room temperature really are the least likely to become acidic and least likely to cause any of almost the rancidness that happens to oils over time. Also, if you don't know this, the seed oils are not, even olive oil is a seed, it's actually a fruit oil, but olive oil is great if you're not heating it. As soon as you start to heat it, that's when it becomes this chemistry that you shouldn't probably be putting in your human body. And we're getting down to just some of the nuts. I always point out peely nuts, which I think are interesting. Peely nuts are really high in fat and they totally taste like butter. But when this kid saw that there were nuts available on the diet, that's where he said, oh, I could do that. Oh, I could do that. And again, what he's doing is getting away from some of those other snacks that like when people say, I'm just really struggling with potato chips or with crackers. And yes, the carbohydrates are the enemy as far as the ketogenic diet goes, but I would also show them that the answer for feeling better is just, they're almost all fried in seed oils. And it is really hard on your brain and your body when you do that. So if there's one reason to find a different snack to snack on, that's what I would recommend. This little book is, it is made out of a non-tearable and waterproof material because this should go through like 3 or 4 students before, I mean, maybe more. So once you've learned this, you're like, okay, I get it. Pass it on to somebody.
Please subscribe to my channel. And don't forget to click the notification bell so you don't miss out on any new videos. Stay tuned.